Assalamu alaikum. In this video, I'll revise the concept of probability. The topics which are covered are include probability theory, axiom the probability, sample space, events, some basic rules like additive rule, and some examples. To begin with, probability represents the likelihood that an event occurs. It is between 0 and 1, where 0 represents the impossible event and 1 is for sure event. Okay. First of all, there are three assumptions or axioms we use for probability. The first one is hold on. the first one is the first one is that probability of an impossible event is 0. Say the probability of a known event or certain event is 1. And for the rest of the event, probability is between 0 and 1. I mean, the events which are probable but not guaranteed. So ना impossible हो ना ही possible, right? अच्छा. Based on these axioms, we can proceed to the formula, which is this. The probability of an event or any event that occur can be written as number of favorable outcomes upon number of total outcomes. Let's have an example. Let's say we consider the example of a coin toss. In a coin toss, we have just two possibilities, heads and tails. The probability that a head appears simply 1 out of 2. Similarly, in case of a die roll, we can say that there are 6 possibilities. The probability that a number greater than 3 appears. The probability that a number greater than 3 appears can be written as 3 upon 6 because there are 3 favorable outcomes and 6 total outcomes. Right? Similarly, we can calculate or have an idea about total number of outcomes using the concept of sample space and event. What is sample space? It shows us all possible outcomes of an experiment. किसी भी experiment में जितने total outcomes हैं, they are shown by sample space. For example, consider an experiment of rolling a die. The sample space is this. Using this sample space, you can define any event or any subset of this sample space. It uses different combinations to create many events जिनको अभी हम सबको define करते हैं. Events including impossible events, sure events, mutually exclusive events, exhaustive events, dependent and independent events. We'll all revise them up. Okay. First of all, let's consider an example of a simple normal event. Assume that you roll a die and you get a number which is even. And even number suggests that out of the sample space, which is 1 to 6, your event has just 3 numbers, which is 2, 4, and 6. So your event shows the favorable outcomes you have, and this shows the total number of outcomes which are possible. Okay. The probability of this event can be calculated as number of elements in the event divided by number of elements in that sample space. यानी favorable 3 थे and total 6. Right? Based on this, we can use this concept to define other events. What is the impossible event? An event that is outside the scope of sample space, मतलब उसकी probability अगर 0 है, then E is an impossible event. Let's name it E1. What is a sure event? A sure event E2 is the one, इसकी probability 1 आ जाएगी. Right? अच्छा, other than that, we have mutually exclusive events. The events A and B are said to be mutually exclusive if the intersection probability of these two events is zero, right? Other than that, we can define some more events like exhaustive events. Exhaustive are the ones जिनकी union probability is equal to 1. मतलब क्या है? म्यूचुअली एक्सक्लूसिव का मतलब ये है दे कैन नॉट occur at the same time. Think of it. अगर एक परफेक्ट सिस्टम है डिटरमाइन करने का कि कौन फर्स्ट आएगा किसी रेस में, तो इन दैट केस दो हॉर्सेस का एक साथ जीतना जो है वो म्यूचुअली एक्सक्लूसिव है, मतलब कोई एक ही विनर हो. अच्छा, so we have seen impossible, sure, mutually exclusive, and the last one we saw is exhaustive. A और B exhaustive होंगे अगर उनकी यूनियन probability 1. Other than that, एक type of events और exist करते हैं. Let me write them here. This type of event is dependent and independent events. देखिए, probability theory में we have a way to find out if events are independent. और वो क्या है? The intersection probability must be equal to the product of probability of individual events. I mean this. So if we have that, we can say that the events are independent. But if the intersection probability is not equal to the product of individual probabilities, then in that case we can say that events are dependent. ठीक है? So make sure you understand the difference between these type of events. अब चलते हैं probability के कुछ commonly used rules की तरफ. The first one is addition rule or additive rule. What is additive rule? It helps us find out the union of two events using the intersection. ठीक है? अच्छा, before I proceed, I would like to introduce some notations. जब भी हम A union की B की बात करते हैं, probability of A union B, what does it suggest? It suggests the probability that either A or B occurs. और इसमें both की possibility included होती है. Either A or B or both. But A intersection B refers to the probability that A and B occur. To make it more clear, we can use the word both. That both A and B occur. This is A intersection B. Okay. This is why usually we write this or for union and this for intersection. Achha. How can we do that? Let's have an example for additive rule. The example of additive rule can be understood as in a school, the probability of being a male student 0.4. The probability a, of being a cricket player or being part of cricket team is 0.3. And the probability that a student is both male and part of cricket team is 0.1. Now you need to find the probability that a student is male or part of cricket. Can be written using additive law. आपको ए बी में लिखने की भी जरूरत नहीं है. You can simply write your events the way I am writing. Just by putting in the values, you can find your, uh, ये आप इसकी probabilities निकाल सकते हो। तो probability of being a male 0.4, probability of being a cricket team player 0.3. Subtracting the probability of intersection, you get 0.6. Okay, so that is the first rule or additive rule. Now I'll discuss some examples for multiplication rule as well. Now I'll talk about multiplication rule. Multiplication rule is used for the cases where the events are independent. It simply, या तो आपको क्वेश्चन में गिवन हो that events are independent, या फिर आप जज कर सकते हो. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, अच्छा, consider two students A and B. A and B solve a question independently. The keyword to find in these questions is independently or independent. If probability that A solves the question is 0.5 and B solves the question is 0.4. I'm sorry. What is the probability that both A and B solve this question working independently? ये assumption. ठीक है, आप मुझे बताएं. Since A and B are independent, we can write this using multiplication rule. So this becomes 0.5 times 0.4, which is 0.2 or 20%. Right? अब यहाँ पे एक रूल की और एंट्री होती है, which is complement rule. How can I solve for this complement rule? मैं कलर चेंज कर लेता हूँ so that you can see it clearly. Complement rule is used for events that are opposite to some event. या opposite events. Think of this. Probability of having a head is 1/2, while probability of not having a head, which is shown by H superscript C, जो उसका opposite है, complement show कर रहा है, can simply be calculated by 1 minus. So complement shows the opposite. Okay. So probability of not having a head can be written as 1 minus 1 upon 2, which is 6. Right? Acha. Let's see some more examples. Let's say complement rule में the probability of having a number 1 in a die. Let's say we are considering a die roll experiment. The probability of having a number 1 is 1/6. The probability that the face which appears does not include the number 1. So this is 1 minus 1.6. तो इस second rule है कि complement के लिए you basically subtract the probability from 1. Then comes the next part, which is a relatively complex example. Complement rule और basically हम multiplication rule को combine करके देखते हैं. So let's combine rule 2 and 3. उसी example को recall करें. The probability that A solves the question is 0.5 and probability that B solves the question is 0.4. तो ये तो हमने निकाल लिया था ये intersection, सही, which was using independent events 0.2. But what if I want to calculate the probability that A solves the question but B does not solve it? अब इस केस में क्या होगा, जाहिर है A और B इंडिपेंडेंट है. I can write it this way. A solves it but B doesn't. So A के लिए तो 0.5 आ जाएगा. But to calculate B complement, I'll subtract this probability with 0.4. And this is how we use complement rule to find the probability that A solves, I'm sorry, but B does not. Right? Similarly, you can use these rules to find the probability that A doesn't solve, but B does. In that case, this probability 1 minus A times probability of B. So ये करके आपके पास आंसर आ जाएगा the probability that A doesn't solve, but B does. ये भी 0. Lastly, the probability that neither A nor B solves this question. So in that case, probability आ जाएगी दोनों के complement की, and they both will be subtracted from 1. Right? तो ये हो जाएगा 1 minus 0.5, ये हो जाएगा second में 1 minus 0.4, and that gives us 0. ठीक है, तो इस तरह से हम कॉम्प्लीमेंट रूल को कंबाइन कर सकते हैं। देन कम्स द लास्ट पार्ट, फॉर म्यूचुअली एक्सक्लूसिव इवेंट्स। आई नीड टू कीप दिस शॉर्ट, इसीलिए मैं ज्यादा डिटेल में नहीं जा रहा, आगे एग्जांपल्स हैं विच यू कैन स्किप अगर आपको क्लियर हो गया, इफ नॉट फॉलो कर लीजिएगा। लास्टली, म्यूचुअली एक्सक्लूसिव इवेंट, द इवेंट फॉर विच इंटरसेक्शन इज 0। लेट्स से एक एग्जांपल देखते हैं। लेट्स से A and B आर म्यूचुअली एक्सक्लूसिव। क्वेश्चन में कैसे आ सकता है? Probability of A is 0.4, probability of B is 0.3. Now the question is, are A and B independent? तो इसका स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड आंसर क्या होगा? नो। Why no? Because A intersection B should be equal to A probability of A into B, और म्यूचुअली एक्सक्लूसिव की वजह से we know that probability of A intersection B is 0. So how can 0 be equal to some positive probability? ये देखिए, left hand side is not equal to right hand side. It suggests that mutually exclusive events are never independent. They are not independent. ठीक है, तो ये म्यूचुअली एक्सक्लूसिव के लिए ये बात को समझ। सेकंड, हाउ टू फाइंड ए यूनियन बी। अगेन म्यूचुअली एक्सक्लूसिव के लिए जब आप यहाँ रखेंगे एडिटिव लॉ में, जो हमने अभी अभी कवर किया है, सो हियर दिस पार्ट इज बाय डिफॉल्ट 0। तो म्यूचुअली एक्सक्लूसिव के लिए यूनियन का डायरेक्ट तरीका होता है ये, जो कि इसकी एक मॉडिफाइड फॉर्म। राइट, हैविंग सेड दिस, अब कुछ एग्जांपल्स हैं विच यू मे स्किप दिस, अगर आपको क्लियर हो गया, वरना आप इसको फॉलो कर सकते। एग्जांपल्स इंक्लूड चूजिंग अ कार्ड, फ्लिपिंग अ कॉइन, थ्रोइंग अ डाई, सो ऑन। सेवन, लेट्स से देयर आर थ्री pillows, three red, two yellows, one blue. What is the probability of picking a yellow pillow? This is simply going to be 2 over the sum of all pillows, which is 2 by 6 or 1 by 3. Right? एक एग्जाम्पल ये हो सकती है, the probability that first is yellow and second is red. What about this? तो बेसिकली येलो और रेड बता दिया उन्होंने, फर्स्ट येलो है, सेकंड रेड। तो फॉर फर्स्ट येलो यू हैव 2 out of 6। अब कीप इन माइंड, यहाँ पे कॉन्सेप्ट ये आ रहा है कि फर्स्ट आपने येलो पिक कर लिया तो येलो अवेलेबल नहीं होगा। ठीक है, जिसको कहते हैं विदाउट रिप्लेसमेंट। यहाँ पे अजम्पशन क्या है, दैट पिलोज आर पिक्ड विदाउट रिप्लेसमेंट, यानी जो पिक कर लिए वो वापस रिप्लेस नहीं हो रहा। फॉर सेकंड यू हैव चॉइस ऑफ 5, और उसमें से रेड कितने? 3। तो दिस गिव्स यू एन आंसर ऑफ 2/10। ठीक है। बाय द वे, ये कंडीशनल प्रोबेबिलिटी का पार्ट है विच आई विल कवर इन द नेक्स्ट वन। काफी ज्यादा टॉपिक्स है तो इसलिए मैंने इसमें ऐड नहीं किया। अच्छा, there's a container full of colored bottles. These are blue bottles. Let's name it B. 300 है out of 1000, ये इनकी probability आ गई। For red we have 200 out of 1000. For green we have 450 out of 1000, and for orange we have 50 out of 1000. So the probability of picking a green bottle is one. अच्छा, this is interesting. पार्ट ए तो बहुत सिंपल है, यू कैन सॉल्व यूजिंग दिस फॉर्मूला। बी इंटरेस्टिंग है। इफ देयर आर 100 बॉटल्स, हाउ मेनी ऑफ देम आर लाइकली टू बी ग्रीन? सी, 100 को आप मल्टीप्लाई करते हैं विद द प्रोबेबिलिटी ऑफ ग्रीन बॉटल्स। 100 मल्टीप्लाई बाय प्रोबेबिलिटी ऑफ ग्रीन इज 450 out of 1000, and which gives you 4.5, right? एग्जाम्पल 3 को आई थिंक स्किप कर दें, इट्स नॉट डिफिकल्ट, ये पहले कवर हमने कर लिया है। लेट्स लुक एट एग्जाम्पल 3, ये वाली जो। A vessel contain 4 blue balls, 5 red and 11 white. 3 balls are drawn at random. Okay? The first is red, second is blue and third is white. Basically, ये कॉम्बिनेशन आपको बनाना है। बट यहाँ नोट करने वाली बात क्या है कि रैंडमली पिक कर रहे हैं, और जब तक बताया ना हो, ये भी विदाउट रिप्लेसमेंट वाला केस है, यानी बॉल पिक करके वापस नहीं रख रहे। राइट। तो सबसे पहले अगर फर्स्ट रेड की बात करें तो रेड्स आर 5 out of, टोटल कर लें इनका, यू गेट 20। फॉर ब्लू यू हैव 19, 4 out of 19 ब्लू की प्रोबेबिलिटी होगी, तो 2 बेसिकली 4। एंड फॉर थर्ड वन विच इज वाइट, नाउ यू हैव 18 लेफ्ट, और वाइट सारी की सारी बची हुई है विच इज 11। So multiplying this up, you can calculate the probability. अच्छा, lastly, I think यहीं तक था इसमें, simple probability यहीं तक है। अच्छा, there is one more concept which I like to cover. वो है simple और complex events। भाई, आप रोलिंग अडाई वाली एग्जाम्पल assume कर ले, 1 2 3 4 5 6 वाली। Think of an event E such that a number greater than 3 occurs. So E is equal to 4 5 6. E is a complex event. Why is E complex? Because E contains more than one possibility from a sample space. Yani E can be broken down into 3 simple events. In simple words, जिसके अंदर सिर्फ एक एलिमेंट हो सैंपल स्पेस का, वो सिंपल इवेंट होगा, बट एनी इवेंट दैट हैज मोर देन वन एलिमेंट इज कॉम्प्लेक्स इवेंट। ठीक है। तो हैविंग सेड दिस, बेसिक प्रोबेबिलिटी यहाँ पे रिवाइज हो जाती है। कंडीशनल के लिए आई विल ऐड शेयर अनदर वन। ठीक है। फॉर योर कन्वीनियंस ये फाइल भी मैं वहाँ ऐड कर दूंगा, तो कोई क्वेश्चन हो तो बताइए। थैंक यू।